Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of Desert Fathers in a Year. I'm Jamie Baxter from Exodus 90. It's a privilege to journey with you as we continue our trek into the desert. For the last 3 weeks, we've meditated on self-mastery, reading Bishop Eric Varden's selections from the 4th chapter of the systematic collection of the Desert Fathers. Christ teaches that what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a man. This is why the Desert Fathers place such an emphasis on speech in their sayings on self-mastery. The old man who visits Abba Anthony with young pilgrims noted how speech without consideration is like a donkey unkept by a gate. Abba Aqilas fought an evil word that came his way from a brother. God turned it to blood, and he spit it from his mouth. Abba Sarapion confessed his necessary words, which reunited him with his spiritual father and set him free. The fathers say much about self-mastery in other areas of life. While we find great diversity in their practices of asceticism, which are in themselves training in self-mastery, we find that their teaching unites in common emphasis. With that, I'll hand it over to Bishop Varden as we read and meditate on a saying from Abba Macarios. This is episode 22 of Desert Fathers in a Year. Austerity at home, charity abroad.
It was said about Abba Macarios that when he spent time with the brethren, he established as a rule for himself that he would, if wine was offered, partake of it for the brethren's sake. But for a single cup of wine he would spend 1 day without drinking water. So the brethren served him wine to afford him relaxation, and the elder received it with joy in order to mortify himself. His disciple, however, seeing how things played out, said to the brethren, "For God's sake, stop giving it to him, for if you do not, he will discipline himself to death back in his cell." Learning what was going on, the brethren no longer offered it to him. Each year on Ash Wednesday, set to embark on what the liturgy calls our season of spiritual warfare, we hear the Lord's admonition from the Gospel of Matthew. When you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites. We're not to appear glum, not to make a display of our asceticism. Instead, we're told, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by men, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The desert monks took this injunction literally. They could go to great lengths in order to keep their austerity hidden. We are told of fathers, even very distinguished ones, who are put right when they fail even minimally in this regard. Vanity is to God-seekers a more insidious enemy than infractions of regulated fasting. The fathers stressed the importance of courtesy too. If you go to visit somebody and find that your hosts, to honor you, have put on a spread that doesn't correspond to rules you have fixed for yourself, you risk causing offense by saying, "I am sorry, but I cannot eat sausage rolls on a Wednesday in Lent." Not only will you fail to honor their hospitality, you belittle them by making them see that they had forgotten some ascetic precept or other. You yourself may be left aglow with self-satisfaction. One does walk a knife's edge in such cases. Principles are important, but more beneficial still is readiness to transcend one's individual fixed ideas. Macarios knows it gives his brothers joy to offer him a glass on occasion. It's their way of giving him something back for all he gives them. Accepting their gesture, he shows he is part of their fellowship. He doesn't stand aloof. At the same time, he knows that wine, even in modest amounts, doesn't further prayer. Notwithstanding his host's good intentions, social drinking compromises his purpose. That is why he resolves to pay each glass back secretly, so to speak, by an act of self-renunciation. It's a radical one. We're often reminded of how hot the desert is. The mere fact of living in it is a trial. Even seasoned monastics can be mesmerized by the thought of water-filled vegetables. One father hung a cucumber from the ceiling in his cell to keep this preeminent object of desire before his eyes to fight temptation. Israel's children's pining during the Exodus for Egypt's cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic echo in the sayings of the Desert Fathers. To deprive oneself entirely of water for a whole day in such a place was an heroic, even a dangerous feat, causing Macarios' disciple to intervene to stop what he saw as plain madness. The brethren had had no idea of Macarios' agreement with himself. We imagine their distress. They thought they were being kind to an old friend, but in fact had caused him hardship. This points us to a first lesson we can draw from this story. When we offer hospitality, a gesture of kindness, or a gift, do we do it for others' sake or for our own pleasure? Have we asked if they would like what we offer, or have we simply served it up on a plate, perhaps in a double portion? What Macarios teaches us, on the other hand, is no less important. Great self-control is needed to accept with tact an offering that may repel me, and to do it so wholeheartedly that the giver is thrilled. Such situations are not to do with dissemblance. Macarios demonstrates an ability to discern higher goods. A true ascetic will rejoice more in occasions to mortify self-will than in displaying the rigor of his or her observance. The concern to show others honor, to avoid giving offense, is evidenced with countless variations in the literature. I love the story told of Abbot John on a journey. His guide lost his way. It was night. John's companions whispered, "What to do? This fellow is getting us more and more lost." John said not a word. If he, so senior, so highly respected, did, he would humiliate his guide. So he pretended to be tired, unable to go on. The company rested until sunrise, when they could retrace their path. This is the spirit of the Fathers, rather to spend a night in uncertainty and cold than to belittle another. Naturally, the pretext of charity can be instrumentalized as an underhand means to obtain what I want but shouldn't really have right now, rest or wine or whatever it is. There are no hard and fast rules. Each case is judged on merit. When a brother asked Abba Sissos what to do when others would detain him after church for an agape, Sissos said, "It is a difficult question. What matters is to ask it, then to seek a rational answer, illumined by charity, not a dressed-up excuse for intemperance."
It was said about Abba Makarios that when he spent time with the brethren, he established as a rule for himself that he would, if wine was offered, partake of it for the brethren's sake. But for a single cup of wine, he would spend one day without drinking water. So the brethren served him wine to afford him relaxation, and the elder received it with joy in order to mortify himself. His disciple, however, seeing how things played out, said to the brethren, "For God's sake, stop giving it to him, For if you do not, he will discipline himself to death back in his cell. Learning what was going on, the brethren no longer offered it to him. May we become truer ascetics, learning to judge when love demands us to let down our practice for still greater love, and to take them up again in our pursuit of self-mastery. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode. Please visit desertfathers.com to subscribe to our email newsletter. That's desertfathers.com. Desert Fathers in a Year is brought to you by Exodus 90, produced by EWTN, and written by Bishop Eric Varden. Men, Easter is not a day, but a 50-day season that lasts even longer than Lent. Join us for Easter 50, a spiritual exercise designed to support your sustained joy, celebration, and freedom in the light of the resurrection. Download the Exodus 90 app today, or visit exodus90.com to learn more. Saint Macarios the Great, pray for us.